Hoping everyone is doing well. I am on here because I wanted to share my Sunday. Today is Tuesday, May 20th, but I wanted to talk about an experience that I had on Sunday, which it is a really, it's one that has stayed with me since it happened. And so I'm going to share it here, and ultimately this will get out. So Sunday was important because it was May 18th, falling on a Sunday. And what is May 18th, you ask? It's Haitian Flag Day, in recognition of the Haitian flag and the symbolic impact that it has had on the Haitian community. And so when my husband asked me to preach, when the bishop asked the reverend to preach on Sunday, May 18th, I quickly asked. I said, "Look, this is so it's such an important day in probably the most life-defining season for Haitian people, with kind of the instability in the country." Matching the instability of their fates here in the U.S. And so, are you sure you don't want to, lead through that? And he said, no. This is you. This is you. And so, I went into deep prayer, and upon kind of reviewing what God had placed in my heart, He brought me back to the book of Nehemiah. And the book of Nehemiah is one that I remember studying a long time ago, but these last few weeks in reading through the book and really understanding and internalizing the strategies, it made it such that it was the most appropriate passage to really deliver and share with everyone. In its most basic terms, it was a young man that had a calling. And that calling came out of news that he received from his brothers, who told him about the devastation back in Jerusalem, with the walls being torn down, with gates burned down, with no real economic, financial stabilization. The Israelites were in a very bad place. And he heard this news, and the word says that, he wept. Not just tears coming down his eyes, but he wept, like he wailed. He wailed to the Lord. And it says that he prayed, and he went into a fast. And when he went into that fast, it hit me, and I would further learn that Nehemiah had never been to Jerusalem. In fact, Nehemiah was born in captivity, and his current role as part of the king's staff, he's the king's cupbearer, and one would liken that to a chief of staff, which literally put his life, at the forefront when tasting and examining anything that the king would eat or drink. He was in a place where the emotions that he had, yeah, I think he would always have been sad, because clearly Judah, Jerusalem, that's the place of his birth, his place of his ancestors, of generations. But it's not as if he had this real connection or memory. And so the wailing, the fasting and praying for not just 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, what would go to be about 4 or 5 months before he actually had a conversation with the king around what was happening, to me was that was pretty that was pretty important. to understand. And I think that looks like, you know, a young woman who was not born in Haiti, um, had experiences, obviously, right, through visits, but not necessarily native or of origination, like born in the land, just always feeling like there's more I could do or more I could contribute. And the feeling that you have of hopelessness for a country that, for the most part, you've been told about. I think that's symbolically, captured my attention, and made me want to bring up this piece of the word, to our folks. And so after this moment of, um, I would say, introspection and putting it back onto God, because he, asked for redemption. He asked for forgiveness on behalf of him, on behalf of his family, for the people essentially abandoning what was called upon their lives and called upon their nation. He, went before the king and told the king, um, nothing at first, because it was his appearance and his emotion that actually ended up being the teller, or what revealed to the king that something was wrong. The king asked, "Why are you so sad?" And Nehemiah said, "Well, my country is in disaster. Where my family's graves are is in absolute chaos. And why wouldn't I be sad over that?" Which, by the way, for Nehemiah to even get to a point where he's speaking to the king of what's making him sad went completely against his role and responsibilities, because he was the chief cupbearer. And his role required that he, one, be professional, two, be handsome, and three, be able to keep the king happy, alive, but also happy and in good spirits. And so what he said could have equated to him being killed, replaced. But the king said, "Well, what do you want me to do? What do you request of me? How can I help?" And I think those 4 to 5 months of um, prayer and fasting led to what would ultimately be the gathering of resources needed to really get to, and complete and execute the assignment. Because this is what he did. He asked for letters to every governor that would be along the journey, because he requested to go back. He wanted to go to Jerusalem. And those letters would serve as kind of door openers for him to get through to where the land is. He asked for permission, for the chief of kind of the forest to allow him to bring back wood for not only the rebuilding of the wall, but also for the building of his own home, that would be there, which, at simple glance, when you read that, you may think, oh, yeah, of course he's going to need a home to live in. But what he was essentially doing was reestablishing himself in the country. He had no home, he had to build one there. And so he asked for that. And later, you would find out that he was given, maybe not initially asked, but was given a whole army to guide along the way. And so he had a whole army guiding him, part of the king's kind of royal um, group, security group. They would take him through the journey. And now, when he gets there, please excuse my oven. It is going. But here's when he gets there. What does he do? One would assume that he gets right to work. No, he did nothing for 3 days. Or what would be assumed as nothing written in the word, I could place in there he probably was in prayer. for the next strategy. He probably was in fasting for what to do, what exactly to do next. And what would happen next upon that third day, right in that evening, is that he took his donkey and two or three other people, small, very, very tiny group, to go with him to inspect the area, inspect the wall. So he was in a place of analyzing, assessing. No action yet, but analyzing where exactly, which part of the wall needed the most, or is this burn marks, or is this salvageable? Right? I can imagine all those things in his head, right? Touching, and just getting a sense of, okay, all right, this is where this can start. And as he did that, that's where the opposition starts, right? Because no sooner do you know what your calling is or what you're supposed to do or thinking about the strategy to do all of those things, that enemy, he don't play. He's right behind you. Sometimes right at your side, in your ear. And the enemy in this word turned out to be three people, three officials from different areas. And they said, "What are you trying to start trouble? What are you rebelling against the king? What are you trying to do here?" Because they heard word from the other governors. They heard. They knew that there was a stranger amongst them. They didn't know where he came from. So much so that when they asked, "Are you rebelling against the king?" they didn't even realize that he was part of the king's closest. They did not even realize that he was literally the chief that would keep the king safe and was trusted so much so that he would put his own life before the king's safety. And so he responds to them and he says, "Listen, it is the God of heaven who brought me here. And what's happening here, you have no right to. You can't claim, it's not part of your heritage. You have no right to it. So there, take that." He could have said, "Don't you know who I am?" Talking about rebelling against the king. But he didn't go there. See, Nehemiah wasn't the pettiness that we sometimes have. Um, and so the passage then goes into chapter 3. Or even before that, he rallies the troops. He talks to them. He says, he gathers hopeless people. Because there's been 150 years of this devastation. He gathers hopeless people. And he says, "Look around us. There's chaos, there's devastation. What are we doing?" And in my mind, I'm imagining a group of people looking at him like, "Yeah, we see it. We've been living it. You just came." But then he turned and said, he gave him the word that his God gave him, that he was here to lead rebuilding the wall. And I could imagine that their ears started perking up and started really getting curious in terms of, what is he talking about? Rebuilding. And then he gives them the "God sent me, and the king gave us resources to actually do it." And so what went from a hopeless people would then change into people who by the end said, "All right, I'm ready." And one next to him said, "I'm ready." The one next to him said, "I'm ready. Let's do it. What are we waiting for? When do we get to work?" He rallied the troops. And in chapter 3, the passage gets good because it shows us how the work got done. Here's how the work got done. This chief priest gathered his people on the north side of the wall, and across from where he was, he started building his section of the wall. And then chapter 2 said right next to him was this person and those around him, they got to rebuilding their section of the wall. And then chapter 3 says, and then this person and this group was right next to the one before them. And they started rebuilding their section of the wall. And the whole chapter hinges upon this one next to this one, next to this one, next to that one, until you have the wall and its structures built in 52 days. Who built it? 38 individuals is what's counted off, and 42 groups that's counted off, that's accounted for. 38 individuals, 42 groups. And they're from everywhere. They're trades people, perfumers, chief priests, just women, men, groups. And the significance of them building it in front of where they resided or near their own territories is so significant, because it meant, one, you're not going to build something that you're not going to be prideful for, especially if it's staring at you every day right in front of your home. Two, it allowed them to be close to, and so resources getting to and from were easier and easier for them to maneuver, right? They weren't going far off. And then three, families got involved. It wasn't the responsibility of one person. Whole units got together and built their section of the wall. And like I said, the section was built starting up north and then went to the west and then went to the south and then through the east until it was all done in 52 days. How symbolic is it for it to be accomplished in this way, with the community, with the expertise that each person brought? It was so symbolic for me. And I think the symbolism didn't stop with the wall. The symbolism looked like a blueprint or a pattern for rebuilding a family unit that's been broken, or rebuilding, a heart that's been broken, or rebuilding a country that's in devastation. How symbolic is it that on a day where we were recognizing and saluting and honoring the flag of a country that's seen more devastation than I would argue any other country, from the time that we claimed freedom from slavery as the first Black republic, to all the pilfering and theft that has happened since. So, Sunday ended with the community building piece of the passage. But personally, Sunday also ended with what I would call, after preaching, after delivering the sermon, the most acute, the most strongest act of internal spiritual warfare that I personally had ever gone through. No sooner did I finish delivering that sermon, did the voice in my head just want to negate all that God had given me to say. I kept thinking, useless. Everything's vanity. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're ineffective. To the point where it was so strong, I was writing it down like, why am I? Two things happened that day. I started the day fasting, even though I had an urge to have breakfast. I just felt like, no, don't have breakfast. And then the second thing is that I would normally end a fast at noontime. but I ended up continuing it through 6. So it was the longest fast that I had personally done. And throughout that whole time, after the sermon, the voices, and it took me to say 2 things to finally gain control. The first thing that I said was, I do not come into agreement with this spirit. Whatever this is, I do not come into agreement. And then the second thing was what Job said as he was going through the challenge and the devastation within his own home, mind, land, all of it. He said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And I kept repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And I'll tell you, when you hit words with the word, listen, you'll conquer spirits, you'll conquer it all. And live to have a testimony as I'm giving here. So thank you for your time. Keep me in prayer. Keep our ministry in prayer. Keep our family in prayer as we live to do good works here on earth. Bye now.